Hey coffee nerds, or coffee lover, maybe soon to be coffee nerd, and you probably clicked on this video because you want to learn how to make better coffee at home. And so that's why I'm doing this. Recently I put out a quick ebook, little PDF here called the Coffee Brewing Cheat Sheet, and it really goes through 5 steps, 5 main considerations that I believe will instantly improve your coffee brewing at home. And they basically are: number 1, quality of the coffee beans; number 2, the grind size itself; number 3, water composition; and number 4, water to coffee ratio; and then of course number 5, how to taste and how to adjust your recipe based on your taste. So let's just get right into it here with the quality of the coffee. Now, what does that mean? That can be a little bit harder to pin down if you're not as experienced with specialty coffee. But we'll start with a bag, for example. You find it on the shelf, maybe in a coffee shop, maybe it's in the grocery store. We try to look for specialty coffee beans. So if you ask for that in a cafe or in a roastery, they're gonna point you in the right direction. But if you don't have the right answer there, what I do is I look for more details. The more details usually points toward a better quality coffee, like the country of origin, the region itself, the processing method that the producer used, the producer itself sometimes, maybe a little bit of a story about the coffee. Of course, this doesn't indicate 100% that it's going to be better quality, but it shows that the roaster at least did their homework and they want to put a little bit more of that information. Also, another thing that I look for is actually the price. Of course, higher the price doesn't always mean higher the quality, but it does point in that direction in the sense that the producer is likely getting paid more when you're buying a more expensive coffee. Again, there's many exceptions to this, but talk to your roaster, talk to your cafe, learn a little bit more about where the coffee's coming from. Whereas there's some don'ts, some things that I wrote in here. Some of the examples are looking for 100% Arabica. Now, I think that's a term that worked in the past, but I think it's a little bit passé because Arabica is a great species of coffee. Most of the coffee that we're drinking in specialty is Arabica, but there's nothing wrong with Robusta either. So it's not about comparing Arabica to Robusta, it's just different flavor profiles, and I don't think we need to write that necessarily on the bag anymore. But also another thing you might want to look for is the texture, the look of the coffee itself. So if it's too oily, it's too dark, maybe it's uneven in the roast, many different colors going on, some broken pieces, it's usually not a great sign of the quality of the coffee. So again, try it yourself, drink what you like, but those are some main points for the quality of the coffee. Now, let's talk about grind size. So I've got my hand grinder here, but I've also got this blade grinder. And what I would recommend to you, of course, this is going to be the cheapest and easiest grinder for you to get on the market. They don't really cost that much, and you can get it at most stores. I will say it's good to start out, maybe if that's your only option, but it won't help you to change the grind size of your coffee in order to adapt to different brew methods. And so I do another video explaining the difference between the blade and the burr grinders. So I'll leave that right up here if you want to check that out. This one's pretty dirty and I don't use it, but we'll leave that there so that you can learn more about what grind size does to affect the extraction. For example, I have a little chart in here, on the finer side, that's where we're sitting around espresso, maybe mocha pot. You might move up the list to AeroPress V60, Chemex, and then on the other side, French press. And that tends to use a coarser grind size. Water quality is number 3. So we've got our water here. I am very lucky to have a water filter here in the studio, and we have some filtered water from the Barcelona tap water. So if you're using tap water, you may not get the right results. I've written a little bit here, of course, coffee is typically 98 or sometimes 99% water, in that range. And so we want to be using good water, but it's not just about the taste of the water itself. It's about how that water interacts with the molecules in the coffee bean, how it dissolves different aspects in that brew. So it gets a little bit more sciencey here, but for ideal water composition, the Specialty Coffee Association, SCA, has written a few recommendations. So calcium hardness between 50 and 175 parts per million, total alkalinity 40 parts per million. So that's the range that you're looking for, but there's other factors, right? There's magnesium. Again, it depends on the coffee. Depends on the overall water composition. Keep in mind, there's no perfect water composition for your coffee, but this will give you a good range, and then you can start from there and start playing around. So number 4, your water to coffee ratio. And so very common mistake people make when brewing is messing up the ratio. And I'll share an example from the very beginning of my coffee journey. My parents brewed French press as I was growing up. And so that was what I was used to. So this is the first thing that I grabbed when I wanted to make coffee for myself. But I totally messed it up because I didn't really understand how much coffee needed to go in there, how much water needed to go in there, and it ended up just tasting bad. I didn't know why. So what can really help with that is a scale. I use a scale at home. Many of you may have a kitchen scale, but if you don't, you can at least start with a tablespoon and a measuring cup, right? So if you have a classic, typical tablespoon for baking, you can use one of those. It usually comes out to around 4.5 grams of light roasted coffee, but again, that will change from coffee to coffee. And then you measure that out to how much water you want to put in with the measuring cup. So if you're using a French press, for example, you might say, well, I want, let's say 20 grams of coffee. Then you would put 4 heaping tablespoons of ground coffee in here and use your measuring cup to decide on the ratio. Now, which ratio is best for coffee brewing? That totally depends on your brew method. Espresso is a much shorter ratio. It's more around 1:2, 1:3. Whereas a filter coffee, or in this case, we're using the French press as an example, I might use a 1:15 or 1:16 ratio. 20 grams, you just multiply by 16 and you're gonna get 320 milliliters of water. So that's a good range. I have some more notes and details that are in this cheat sheet, but this will get you started. After you've done all of this, maybe you've gotten your French press, maybe you have your pour over, your espresso machine, and you've got your cup of coffee here. How to taste and know what to adjust in this cup. This is the fun part. So I've put a little chart in here as well to help you along on this journey. If you're getting a little bit of a bitter coffee, something that's just kind of dry and it's got that maybe burnt type flavors to it, then you might want to adjust with some of the things I put in here. I'm not going to go through them all now. And then same with the sour. If it's a little bit too sour, it's a little bit sort of almost too fruity or too acidic, then I've got some tips in here for what you could possibly change. But just some things to keep in mind. Also, time is another really important variable that you want to keep in mind. As I mentioned earlier, if it goes way too quickly through the pour over, it's going to be under extracted and it's going to be weak and not that fun. So this is only the beginning. As I mentioned, this is a cheat sheet. This will get you on the right track. Keeping this video as concise as I possibly can. I hope that you can check it out in the description. I left the link, as I mentioned. Hope to have you along for the coffee brewing journey as we all figure this out together. Hope you enjoyed, hope you learned something, and I will see you in the next video. Might have to adjust this one.